This podcast is brought to you by the one and only Dr. King Faisal Rehman, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you for all your contributions and commitment to all combat sports in Ontario. Your generosity will never be forgotten, and we will forever be in your debt. Welcome to Studio 88. I'm here with my very good friend and a combat sport aficionado, King Faisal Rehman. Welcome to the show, King. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Jamie. Great to be here.
I'm happy you came. And I know you have a really busy schedule.
Are you kidding? You love to be here.
But I wanted to bring you on because your very influential role in combat sports for our whole community. Everybody knows who you are, and there isn't a competitor that owes something to you. But
it's very kind of you.
I kind of wanted to get just a quick rundown of kind of who you are, where it all came from, because people know you as King Faisal. They see you at the gym smashing pads and sparring guys, and then they see you at the hospital saving lives and doing good things all the time. But where did you come from? What's the backstory on Faisal Rehman?
Well, I was born in Thompson, Manitoba, and my parents had immigrated from Pakistan. And growing up in first Manitoba and then Alberta, I was terrible at sports, really not good at anything, not athletic at all. When I was 10, my parents moved me back to Pakistan, where they originally are from, and I got to learn about my culture. I spent a wonderful 8 years there. And when I was there, I did have the opportunity to start kind of training in boxing with the Pakistani boxing team. At one time, there was a guy who had won the bronze medal at the Olympics. I think it was at the Seoul Olympics back in the 80s. And so that was a huge honor for me. Also, growing up as a kid, my mom was a huge fan of Muhammad Ali. In fact, before she met my dad, she would write him love letters with her pictures.
No
and
way.
Stuff. I wouldn't say it was love letters, maybe that's overstating, but certainly letters and sending her pictures. And he would reply back, or at least someone from his team would reply back. And my dad was also a big fan, so we grew up watching boxing. But I never really participated in it. And then when I started university at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, that's when I said, you know what, I want to give this a try. And so I started training at Cougar's boxing gym. A guy by the name of, I think it was Ian Fleming, was a member of the Canadian national team at that time. His dad was my boxing coach. Wonderful guy, awesome.
How were you at the time?
Statesman. I would have been 22, so pretty late for boxing.
Okay.
But I was training, sparring, never had a fight. And then I got into medical school at Queen's University, and I gave it up, went to Queen's, studied medicine, did my internal medicine training at Western, my specialization in kidney disease at Western. And then I went to Toronto, and at the University of Toronto, I did my master's degree in education. And throughout that entire period of time, I had no involvement with sports. And in fact, I was gaining weight tremendously. I love food. I still love food. I'm a food addict. And after I got married in 1998, I started gaining weight like an exponential rate. In fact, at one point, I got up to 242 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And my wife would wake me up in the middle of the night because I'd stopped breathing because I had obstructive sleep apnea. I just stopped breathing in the middle of the night. But I was happy. I loved eating. Didn't care that I was getting fat. I had no motivation to lose weight, really. And I worked hard. I worked very hard. And I, wasn't the healthiest of lifestyles, though, for me. Then I bought a home I couldn't afford for my family. I had a young family. By this time, I had 2 daughters. And so I said, you know what? If I keel over and die, I better make sure I have life insurance so my wife can pay the house off. Mm-hmm. So I tried to apply for life insurance, and they turned me down because on the blood work, I had severe type 2 diabetes. My blood pressure was high. My liver enzymes were up because I had fatty liver because the fat had gotten into the liver and was causing inflammation. So that was a huge wake-up call. And it scared me for sure because I was taking care of patients like that. Mm-hmm. And so I said, you know what, I've got to get myself in shape. So I started eating healthy.
What was the change? Give me a rundown of what was the crappy food that you always used to eat.
I was the guy on Super Size Me. I don't know if any of you guys will remember the movie Super Size Me. But I was eating McDonald's 3 times a week.
Oh, wow.
And what I would have is the big extra burger with cheese, a Big Mac, a filet fish, 2 cheeseburgers. I would have 2 fries, 2 apple pies. And that would be, and a regular large Coke.
Wow.
And that would be my go-to meal. And I was eating that 3 times a week in addition to other shit. So really, it was a terrible diet, and really, I had no physical activity. And I had a 40-inch waist. In fact, my abdomen had gotten so big, my pants would fold over themselves. It was just terrible. I was a wreck, but I didn't care. I was happy. I was quite pleased with the way things were going. But when I saw that blood work, I realized, you know what? This is what's happened to me. I made myself sick.
And how old were you at the time when that happened?
This was 2002, so I would have been 31.
Okay.
So at that time, I said, okay, I've got to get in shape. So I started eating healthy, nothing drastic, but just healthy. And I started exercising every day, running, utilizing boxing as part of my training. So I started getting back into boxing that way.
Where was that?
So I started out at the King Street School of Boxing with Irving Chestnut. Yep. I've been boxing all over the place. So I then joined Sharky's in Sarnia with Kathy Urey. I trained with Brad Fowler at the local kickboxing club at the time. And then eventually I ended up at Adrenaline. But it was done during those initial stages when I was training at the King Street School of Boxing that I lost 90 pounds.
90.
Yeah. So I went down to 154 pounds. And when I repeated my blood work, it was all normal. And I got life insurance. But at that moment, I owed a huge amount to boxing because it had really, in a sense, saved my life. Because if I'd stayed on that track, within 10 years, I would have had severe cardiovascular disease, kidney disease. It would have shortened my lifespan for sure. So I'm grateful for applying for that life insurance test. But I'm also grateful to the sport of boxing because it really helped get me into phenomenal
That's interesting. Because you've done MMA.
Right, that came later. But really, all of my early days was pure boxing. No kickboxing, no wrestling, no mixed martial arts. And my first 7 or 8 fights were in amateur. So I started competing as well. We're always boxing.
You ever get your ass whooped?
Oh,
really bad boxing?
Oh, yeah. I've lost as many fights as I've won, and some of the losses are pretty bad. Knockouts, TKOs. In sparring, I've been hurt several times, especially early on when I was learning. Even though my coach had a watchful eye on me and was really careful with me, it's inevitable that it'll happen. But you get harder over time.
You go back.
And there was a point that I would even spar with 270-pound guys, and I'd hold my own. I wouldn't get hurt. So until later on, we'll talk about that maybe later. But it was a painful learning process, but I loved it.
What about concussions? You ever have any concussions?
I've probably had around 6 or 7 concussions minimum that I know of.
That's a lot.
There's a lot of concussions that you have that you don't even appreciate. Right? But the ones where I know where I was lightheaded for a couple of days and I had symptoms, about 6 or 7. On top of that, I probably had subconcussive trauma that I didn't even realize I was suffering.
Do any of that kind of things affect your work?
No. Thank God. Usually whenever I had a concussion, I'd be back to normal within 24 to 48 hours.
Can you tell us what you do for work? For the people that don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a kidney specialist. So I graduated from med school, did my specialization. So I take care of patients with kidney disease. It's called nephrology. We take care of many patients who end up on dialysis. We take care of patients who've undergone kidney transplantation. Very rewarding. I love my job. Love taking care of patients.
You're very good at it, and you're very respected in the community. Even when I go into the hospitals, there's always a post up. You see a news article, and it's Dr. Faisal Rehman at this event, or you're always doing something.
I appreciate it because we also do a lot of internal medicine, which means I take care of a wide variety of patients, which is a really a big honor for me and something I really love. I love going into work every day.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the charity that you're involved in, that you've actually, I've been so grateful enough to be brought on board with you. We have a collab show coming up September 28th at the Western Fair. Knockout Kidney Disease and Prospect Fighting Championships collab. Tell us a little bit about the charity, how it started. What was the beginning steps?
Oh, no, thanks. And thanks to you and the Prospect Fighting Championships for really making this year's event very special for us. 11 years ago, I became a member of a committee that was looking at ways to enhance research at the London Health Sciences Centre, research in kidney disease in particular. And so we established the Lilibeth Coberto Kidney Clinical Research Unit 11 years ago. And because we have the top-notch researchers, we were able to attract millions of dollars of grants to help fund this unit. The problem is maintaining the unit, funding the trials, even if you get a lot of grants, is not enough to keep the machine rolling. At the same time, we also started the Matthew Mailing Center for Translational Transplant Studies that finds better ways for patients to get access to solid organ transplants, so heart transplants, lung transplants, kidney transplants, pancreas transplants. When you get an organ transplant, unfortunately, it doesn't last forever. Often 10 or 12 years later, the organ starts to fail. So we need to do better research, animal research, to try and enhance the amount of time that these
longevity.
That's right, the longevity of these organs.
And do you find animal parts are better?
I'm sorry?
Animal parts better?
Well, I think the animal models are not perfect, but they do in some ways closely mimic what's happening with the immune system, let's say, of humans.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always translate off, so you have to start doing the animal studies, doing transplants in animals, applying new medications and new techniques, and then you take it into clinical trials in humans. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slugfest. And you need to keep doing this research for often decades before you start to see the benefit. So it's a huge deal to me. I'm very passionate about supporting those two research units. But it became clear that it's going to be tough to raise money. And so they put me in charge of raising money. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to organize a charity event, but the only way I'm going to do it is if it's something I'm passionate about. I'm not going to do another, dinner and, or
charity events sometimes can be dry.
Absolutely.
They
Very
can be
dry.
dry.
Very dry. And I didn't want to be involved with anything like that. So I said, okay, if we're going to do something, it has to be something I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'm going to organize a combat sports event, Vegas-like
So
atmosphere.
the very first one was a combat sport one?
Absolutely.
Boxing.
Yeah. So in 2009,
okay,
we had our first event, and it was amateur boxing.
You fought on it, correct?
And actually, I wasn't supposed to. I was just really wanting to organize it. And it was going to be Team USA versus Team Canada. Mm-hmm. And so I got a committee together of my colleagues and people in the World Boxing Ontario became involved. And we started planning this. And then my coach, who was on the committee, Kathy Urey, 5-time national champion, she said, you know what, if you really want to raise money, you should fight. I said, geez, okay, let's do it. I said, that would be so cool for me, personally gratifying for me to be able to compete in a sport that I always loved, but I never felt I was athletic enough. I was always the last guy picked in any sport growing up as a kid, right? So I said, I want to prove something to myself and see if I can hold my own. So she started training me, taking me all over the province for competitions, for fights prior to this charity event, so over the next year. And then in September of 2019, we had our event, and that was my third fight by the time we had that event. And it was a good, big success. After all expenses paid, we raised $110,000, wow. and which was amazing for our units, our research units. And ever since then, for the last 11 years, we've held a variety of different events, mostly combat sports. And we've raised $1.96 million after the first 10 years, and this is our 11th year, and we'll cross the $2 million mark after all expenses paid. We've been so successful that we've had charities that are local, other charities. So, for example, the Unity Project was a homeless shelter. The Mary J. Wright Center, which helps children who are suffering from social isolation, and it works in conjoint with Marymount, which is a wonderful place for kids. We're supporting poverty initiatives. We are supporting epilepsy research because of our success, we want to be able to help multiple things, not just kidney research. And the other thing I love about our charity is it's London-based. So all of the money is staying locally and helping local issues, but also having an impact nationally. So all of the research that's done in London is often applied internationally, which is amazing. So I'm very, very passionate about it. I'm very grateful to you for helping me. Back in 2014, you helped me with an amazing MMA event that we had with Budweiser Gardens.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite ones.
We raised $250,000 from that event after expenses paid. So I owe you and I owe Prospect Fighting Championships a lot because it's really taken our charity to the next level. We're raising $150,000 more per event every year since we've done that event. So it really got the attention of our local community, and it was an amazing.
I love the relationship that we have. Being on board with it, when you first approached me, I remember it was at the Western Fair, and I had done my first pro show, and I thought I was going to get in trouble. Like, I need to speak with you, and I thought, oh shit. Dr. Faisal wants to, I did something wrong, and then you asked me to be a part of the committee, and you wanted to do a show, and absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I'm very particular about the people I work with. And not to blow smoke up your ass, but you are well organized, you're honest, you're hardworking. You care more than just making money. You care about really putting on a great show that the audience enjoys. That's actually your first mission. That's what makes you special. It's not about making a big profit. It's about putting on a product that looks amazing.
100%.
Because I've attended a lot
Thank
of
you.
pro shows. I've attended a lot of pro shows. I don't know if you know this, but I'm the ringside physician for the Sports Commissioner of Ontario. So I've seen pro shows all over Ontario. I've been to Vegas. I've seen, I've been exposed to a lot. And the quality of your show is amazing. So it's important for me, for my guests, for people who donate to our cause, that they are given the best quality show that we can deliver.
Absolutely.
And I knew I would get that with you. And to this date, that's been our best show. We've done concerts with Blue Rodeo. We've done concerts with Jan Arden. We've had other combat sports events. Chantal Kreviacic. But nothing comes close to that event we had at Budweiser.
That was my favorite event.
So I'm really very, very hopeful that on September 28th this year, we'll be able to put on just as good a show at the Agriplex.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Let's touch base a little bit about the UFC, because you were the cage-side doctor for the Halloway Ortega fight. And I remember texting you, saying, because I saw you on TV, and I said, King, you look great. Not really expecting a reply, because I figured you were working. And I got one maybe 10 minutes later. And that fight was stopped at the end by you. I just want to touch base on you with you, because when I text you, I said, how bad was the eye? And your response to me was, it wasn't his eye that I was worried about, my son. It was his head. And then you were mad at the corner. Tell me a little bit about it. Yeah, please.
So just to give a bit of a prelim on that. So I've been buzzed so many times. I've been hit. I've been hurt. And I know what symptoms people get when they're hit hard and when they're concussed. So that I really truly believe that gives me an advantage as a ringside physician, that I know what these guys to some degree are going through. They're certainly at a different level, but I've been hurt enough that I can appreciate what they go through. And so I've seen some horrible injuries as a ringside physician here in Ontario. I saw it when Ortega had obviously the Ortega Halloway fight I'll talk about in a second, but when Big Nog had his arm ripped off by Frank Mir and it was shattered in multiple places, needed 24 screws, that was a horrible injury. But as a ringside physician, I really want to be in the background. I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want to ever involve myself in a fight if I can help it. So that's one thing I feel strongly about. People shouldn't even notice that I'm there, really. And during the Ortega-Holloway fight, Ortega was getting eaten up alive. He took over 200 or 300 shots to the head over the first 4 rounds. And he was clearly getting lit up, and he had no chance of winning that fight. And at the end of the 4th round, he's kind of slumbered back to his stool, and he was sitting there, and he was barely coherent. Okay, he wasn't talking. So I looked at the coach, who's actually a Gracie, one of the Gracies, and I said, listen, you're just going to stop this fight. I told the coach, save your fight or stop the fight. He said, no, he's okay. And I said, listen, I'm going to give you another opportunity, because I wanted to give him the opportunity to save his fighter. Stop the fight. And he just wasn't having anything of it. He's a piece of shit. That's how upset I was with that the Gracie guy. So I'm looking at Ortega, and I said, listen, buddy, I can't let you take any more headshots. And he couldn't even respond. He was basically out of it. And I looked at the coach and I said, are you going to stop the fight? And he said, no, he's okay. And then I said, well, fuck you. And so I told the head official that the fight's over. And the fight was ended, yeah. And, I didn't want to be in that position. You want to let the corner do their job. But unfortunately, you have to protect the fighters. And if everything else is failing, the referee failed because they didn't stop the fight. The corners failed. As a ringside physician, it's our duty to get involved. So I hope that's the last time I have to do that.
I hope so too. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my sponsor, Rycor Countertops. They deal in custom countertops in quartz, Corian, Meganite, laminate, and butcher block. They also have custom kitchen cabinetry, closets, laundry rooms, and millwork. They're family owned and operated for 18 years, knowledgeable and highly experienced staff, and friendly customer service. Head on over to 1069 Clark Road. Check out their showroom today. Okay, one more thing about this Ortega fight. How was he backstage?
He was rough.
Was he mad that the fight was stopped? Or
No, he could barely communicate. So we took him to the back, and at one point he actually just collapsed. And I thought he was unconscious. So I was really worried that he had swelling on the brain or a bleed in his brain. So we put him down on a gurney. I called the ambulance attendants, and I said, get this guy to the ER right away. I called the ER, I think it was Toronto Western, and said, this guy's coming. He needs an urgent CT scan. He was in no shape to walk, let alone fight.
So you never would have seen that.
I'm still so pissed off at his coach, you know. And I hate intervening. The only other time I stopped a fight outside of Ortega Holloway was when Ryan Ford fought Caro Parisian here in London. And Caro Parisian took a knee to the head and literally had an arterial bleed where he was just spurting blood all over the place, and it couldn't be controlled. And he was upset, but there was no choice. I mean, the whole entire cage was filled with blood. You couldn't even compete, and the bleeding we couldn't control it. He needed a 3-layer closure.
And that's on the head?
For that, with stitches. So it was just on the head. It wasn't a life-threatening injury. It was just the fact that he was spurting out arterial blood. So, that was the only other fight I've ever stopped.
Like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. It was a fucking mess. But coming back to Ortega, he was in no shape to do anything. And it was a little bit, not vindicating, but at least reassuring that I talked to Dana White after, and I said, listen, I had to fucking stop that fight. And, you may want to talk to your officials about, letting fights go on too long. And he was in agreement. He said there's no way that fight should have. In fact, he put out an article. There was an article in the papers the next day that he commended our stoppage. And even Brian Ortega, it was props to him that when he was interviewed a few weeks later, he said that fight needed to be stopped. So, you know what? But I'm bitter that I was put in that position. For this, the safety of the fighters really should be the officials and the corners. And the doctors should hopefully never get involved with stopping a fight. They should take care of the fighters before and after any bout, but they shouldn't, in a proper system, shouldn't be involved with stopping fights.
Do you think they do that because they rather the onus on the doctors so they don't have to explain to their guy they stopped it in case he was upset?
Yeah, listen, like a good example would be eye injuries, right? You're not sure if it's an orbital fracture or is it just a little cut over the eye with some swelling. So that I have no problem with getting the doctor involved to make a decision. But the officials should be calling me to stop that fight, right? I shouldn't have to get up in the cage, look at a fighter who's clearly unable to compete, and it hadn't been stopped by an official and it hadn't been stopped by their corner. That bothers me. Absolutely, if there's a weird cut and the official's not sure about the severity of it or whether there's an associated orbital fracture or some sort of hand injury, and then the referee will stop the fight and call in the physician and will assess. That's proper. That's a proper technique. But, when I went in, because I knew he was in bad shape, and nobody wants to stop the fight. Not the officials, not the corners. That's just bullshit. Like, he would have died. I really fear he would have died if he had gone out for the 5th round.
Do you know who the ref was for that fight?
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember who the referee was. But you know what? These are reasons we need reviews. These are the reasons we need... when after a fight like that, the whole thing should be reviewed by the commission for educational purposes, not to put people down. I'm upset, but I think we should learn from this, and especially his coach. And the reason maybe Gracie's got under my nerve, I don't remember his first name, but I saw a video of him where he was lecturing people on how to be a good athlete and who's a good athlete and who's not. He was very condescending in that video, so that already left me with a bad taste. About this guy. Yeah. He was, I think, criticizing Khabib Nurmagomedov after he jumped out of the cage, but in a way that I didn't like personally. So fuck him. He's even worse. What he did to Ortega is 1,000,000 times worse. Yeah. He supposedly loves that fighter.
Yeah, he's supposed to care.
So stop lecturing about what Khabib is and what he should have done after he beat Conor McGregor. Just fucking mind your own business. But what he did to his own fighter, I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's pretty. Because I when I texted you too, I thought right away. I said, well, maybe he didn't want to make the call because it was a championship fight. He was worried about.
Fuck that.
Right.
Think of it as your son. I mean, if he talks about Brian Ortega like it's his son or his brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to let him fucking die for a fight?
Yeah.
Let him fight another day.
Yeah.
He had no chance of winning that fight. He was beat up from round 1 to round 4. He had not one moment where he was winning that fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even Ortega, I just play devil's advocate here. Ortega is one of those guys that can pull off something at any moment.
True, but not at the cost of the beating he was receiving.
Mm-hmm. Not after.
It's not worth dying for, man.
No,
I've seen, we've seen people die, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've thankfully never been involved with a bout where there's been a death, but there's been a death in boxing, professional boxing here in Ontario. A guy who cut too much weight, had a brain bleed. You know what? This could have been one of those situations. I was convinced he had a swelling in the brain or a bleed by the way he was acting. But thankfully, it was all just pure exhaustion probably and concussion. Mm-hmm. But you know what? If he had taken any more shots, he could have died.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen anything other than that was kind of nightmarish, working ringside?
I've seen some scary knockouts. Thankfully, they're often quick and early. And so really where you worry is when there's repetitive, recurrent trauma in like a multi-round fight, like especially in boxing where
he got knocked
10
down,
or 12
he gets
rounds.
Backed up.
Yeah.
He knocks down, he gets back up.
The worst thing I've ever seen is a standing 8 count.
Mm-hmm.
I hate standing 8 counts because it allows you enough time to recover, enough to take more of a beating. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing I love about MMA is when you can't defend yourself,
that's it.
The fight is stopped. So I actually believe it or not, even with the smaller gloves, that MMA is safer than boxing. If you look at all of the deaths that happened in boxing pre-1983, when Kim was unfortunately died, I think it was Kim, with Boom Boom Mancini, when he fought Boom Boom Mancini. Mm-hmm. It was when the fights were 15-round fights. And based on significant occurrences of death and brain injury, after that year, they cut back the maximum number of rounds to 12 in boxing, which is a positive. But personally, I don't believe in standing 8 counts. I think if the fighter's been knocked down and gets up and is woozy and can't find their balance, they should just stop the fight. Mm-hmm. So I love that in MMA. When you're unable to defend yourself for the first time, it's done. And so it protects the fighter.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite fighter?
Khabib Nurmagomedov by far.
How come?
He's amazing. Because you know what? He's just so super tough and mentally strong. Is a good role model for me. Doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs, doesn't party. A family man, very passionate about his kids. Mm-hmm. Just a good role model and a good person. There's other great fighters too. I love Daniel Cormier. Mm-hmm. As well. These are good stand-up people that I look up to. Okay,
I'll ask you one question: Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson? If they fought each other in their prime, who would win?
Well, I can't. My heart will never let me bet against Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. I think people don't realize he fought some very hard punchers. Mm-hmm. You could even argue as strong as Tyson, Ernie Shavers, George Foreman. He fought some real giants in his era. And I think his speed and athleticism would have won him the fight. Mm-hmm. He was very good at picking away people with his jab. He had a jab that was a slicing jab that would cut people open. Mm-hmm. And he was really good at throwing it at the shorter fighters and messing them up. Even when Joe Frazier beat him in the first fight, it was Joe Frazier who had to go to the hospital, not Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. So I think with his superior jab and his athleticism, a 1966-1967 Ali would beat a 1985-1986 Mike Tyson on points. Mm-hmm. That's my view. Obviously, if the fight happened today, Tyson would be favored in the first 3 rounds. Mm-hmm. If it went longer than 3 rounds, Ali would eat him up alive.
That's amazing. Now, with all the love letters that your mom sent, is there any possible way that maybe he was your dad and you don't know it? They're playing a trick.
It's so funny. I'll have to show you. She still has the autographed picture from 1960 something. That was when my mom was living in Pakistan, and he sent her a letter there. with an autographed picture of himself. So I'll have to find that for you.
Yeah, because
But,
in your office there's a picture of you and Muhammad Ali. You're in boxing gloves.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like the
my secretary made that for me for my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
And
made
I
it.
was like, oh, it's this Faisal with his dad. I'm just kidding. But okay, well, let's wrap this up. I just kind of wanted to bring you and give you. I mean, I can talk with you for hours, but
Yeah, just one last thing, really, Jamie. Thanks again for helping out with our September 29 charity event.
28.
September 28th.
28th, everybody. 28th, September 28th.
That's right.
Mark your calendars.
Showdown in the downtown, teaming up with Prospect Fighting Championships. And we're going to have some awesome fights, some local guys on the fights. And it's going to be a hell of a night. And I think people could contact you to get tickets, I suspect.
Yeah,
right?
tickets will be on sale soon for the event. I'm really excited. We're already working on the card and kind of getting everything ready, especially after Windsor show. It was a bit busy, but now we're pedal to the metal until September 29th. So I'm really excited, but maybe you come back and we can do another one.
Anytime, man.
A little bit
I love it.
closer, and then a follow-up one would be awesome to have you back on just to shoot the shit for even an hour or so or two. But Faisal, thank you for coming in.
No,
I
thanks.
truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, have a great weekend.
Take care, Jamie.
Thank you.
See you.